Hey, how you doing? My name is Michael Johnson, and I'm a artist. I'm an illustrator. I'm a painter, airbrush artist, as well as a mentor. And this is my story. Yeah, I really came to the realization that I was kind of an artist at the age of 5. I was sitting at the coffee table. My mom had bought me a Happy Meal, and I was sitting down there. She gave me some paper to draw with, and I started trying to draw the hamburger that was on the side of the Happy Meal. And I really was like, man, I'm killing this, you know. And I'm drawing it, and my uncle came over, who's also an artist, and he was like, hey man, you're doing a good job on that, but that hat's too small for the hamburger's head. And so I was like, man, I looked, and I realized that I had this big head, and I had this little hat that was just sitting on top of it, kind of like a little cone. Yeah, you know, my main sport was baseball. Anybody that knows me has heard me tell my baseball story a million times. When I was a little kid, I remember watching the Bad News Bears, and I had to have been probably, again, 5, 6 years old or so. And I just remember seeing the Bad News Bears. I got all pumped up. My dad had bought me a little plastic ball and bat, and the sun was going down. We went in the front yard, and he was like, all right, son, and he threw me the ball. He was like, okay, we're gonna do this one time. He threw me the ball, and the first time he threw it to me, I hit it. Mm-hmm. And it was like something in me new, like baseball. Like I had an instant love and passion for it. And so I played baseball through probably my about 12, 13-year-old year. And when I got to school, I was undecided for the first year at Prairie View. And all I was doing was drawing, but I was taking my basics. So, you know, I had all these different options of career paths I could have chosen, I guess, but the only thing that really interested me was art. And when I went into school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew that I didn't want to be an engineer, I didn't want to be a scientist, I didn't want to be a mathematician. I think in my mind there was a couple of things that I thought, oh, that might be interesting. Art, and then I said philosophy. And it was like the second I signed up for that art class, I was an art major. Like it wasn't even like, well, you're gonna take a couple of classes and figure it out. I signed up for art appreciation class, and I was an art major. And so, you know, I called home with the news that I'm going into art, and I had to like try to sell it. Well, it's not just me drawing stuff, it's actually graphic design, which at Prairie they call it advertising art. So I said, well, there's gonna be computers involved. And my dad was kind of like, yeah, all right. Got to U of H. I was in postgraduate studies in painting. I was going from graphic design oriented background as an illustrator to a fine arts background or fine arts program. That was a really serious program. And they let me into the program off of the strength of my work. But once I got in there, I was getting these hard critiques as a fine artist, but I didn't understand the fine art world. I didn't understand how to explain your work. I didn't totally understand how to create work from a conceptual place to where you're putting meaning and composition and all these other things that were the elements of making a piece that somebody's going to stand in front of and engage with. And so my critiques were somewhat brutal because I had teachers that were like, look, like, we're not going to sugarcoat this with you. You know, this piece is good, but there's not anything to it. It just is a good looking piece. You know, for me it was a matter of getting acclimated to this environment, kind of coming in almost feeling like an odd man out, and then at the same time trying to get my skill to a level of proficiency to where I felt like, okay, I can do something with this. And that's where my mentor teacher, Reverend Talley, came in. Was he kind of saw like some of my deficiencies, and he began to explain like how creatives are and the challenges, and he was telling us about how he was when he was in school. And probably one of the best things that Rev did for us was he gave us a visual. Like Rev was always working all the time. If your stuff was whack, Rev would give you a hard critique. He would talk down to you. He didn't care how you felt about it, you know. I remember one time a dude put his artwork up there, and he just knew his artwork was the bomb. And Rev said, man, get this weak stuff out of here. He just knocked the easel and everything over. And the dude was like, I hate you. I was wanting to fight him, you know. But Rev didn't care. Rev was like, man, look, I will be hard on y'all now because the world's going to be hard on you later. Get money. For me, it was like something that was kind of like a hobby, and while I was painting, there was this point where I said, I don't want to be a guy sitting around trying to make a living selling paintings, because again, they taught us everything about what it was to be an artist in grad school. They were like, look, it's a leisure field. I had never heard that before. So they were like, hey, like this is something that when the economy's good, when people have extra money, you're probably going to sell more. If the economy gets bad, people aren't buying art because they're buying food to eat and they're trying to, sustain themselves. And so the reality of being a fine artist, at least, began to sink in. I kind of gone ahead and switched beyond the thing of saying that I'm gonna work in graphic design. I never actually worked in it. I got the degree in it, but I immediately went into grad school, so there wasn't time to go get a job in that and really see what that industry was about. But I pretty much knew I didn't want to do that anyway. The idea of creating artwork that I wasn't connected to, that was going to be disposable. Hey, I made this flyer for somebody and it doesn't move me. People are going to look at it for the time of the event and throw it in the trash. It always felt like it was like I developed this skill and ability across all this time just for it to kind of be this disposable thing, and I didn't like that. So looking at fine art, that was going to be really the way that I would have tried to approach it, from an illustrative perspective, where I want to make beautiful artwork that people are going to see, admire, and appreciate, and maybe buy. Really, I'm a working artist, meaning that I have a day job, and then I produce art when I have the time to do it, as far as when I get off work, on the weekend. Right now, I've been pumping out artwork like crazy, so I stay up late nights, And the thing about it is that I really feel like I understand what being an artist is, as far as I'm giving my all to it, When I started kind of coming back to art in 2015, I started at my table doing black and white work, and it was more or less for me to get the muscle memory back of drawing again, being active. And I did tons of those things, but I always wanted to get back to creating large pieces that were in color. In this particular series, which I'm still got a few more pieces I want to do before I move on from it, this is one of the earlier pieces. And I was trying to put together a concept of pop art. I feel like I'm a pop artist. So I deal with kind of pop art imagery. I want something that's colorful, and I want to use images, but at the same time use words, use text, use numbers, and mix all that together. And the concept that kind of came out that as I began to produce more and more work was that I wanted to make this series almost feel like if you put all these pieces together, it would be like you being in a subway in New York or something, where you have all these advertisements that you are basically taking in, almost like a sensory overload. And there's all these bits and pieces to take from it that are basically kind of informing you as the viewer. So what I did was, okay, let me do something that's personal to me, and let me take a year from my life that there was something that was relevant in that year. So in the year '88, that was the year that Jordan won the slam dunk contest in Chicago.
Nice.
And him and Dominique Wilkins were going back and forth at it. I remember me and my brother recorded it on a little VHS tape. And my brother was like, man, that's the most awesome slam dunk ever. And then I recorded over with the '89 when it was trash. And it was like, what'd you record? Like we knew then, like this is probably one of the most iconic slam dunk contests then. But my thinking was, well, that was last year.
Yeah, right.
And I found this quote from Jordan that to me was like vague and simple, but it embodied the simplicity of greatness.
And it embodies what you've been chasing since you were 11.
Sure. And
right?
It was simple.
Yeah, super simple.
It was simple. The quote that I picked for him was, all I knew is that I never wanted to be average.
That's that part.
Sure. So to me it was like, this guy does all this great stuff. He's this iconic figure. And from the earliest of ages, all he knew is that he never wanted to be average. So that's what that looks like. Honestly, when Kobe first came into the league, I wasn't a huge Kobe fan. But I began to get a profound respect for him. I think really, I really became a Kobe fan in the Olympics when the USA was playing Spain in the finals. And the USA wasn't really winning that game. They weren't really just dominating, because Spain had a really good team. They had a team that had a lot of NBA athletes, and they had a really cohesive team that played together. They weren't a team that was assembled for the Olympics and then they were going to, splinter off. Yeah. So in that game, it was the fourth quarter. It was getting towards the end of the game, and the USA was, I don't think they were winning. And it was like something in Kobe clicked, and he took over. And it was like you saw Kobe take over.
Yeah.
And when he did, I'm like, yeah, like you can say what you want about this guy, but this dude is a competitor. So I put him in the image to where you see enough of him with the basketball to know he's got a basketball, but not enough for it to just be like that's the main focal point.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be like he's this warrior, this assassin that is ferociously doing what he does, and you get all this other information that he's this deadly assassin, codenamed Black Mamba.
Yeah.
And the quote that I took from him was one out of his book, Mamba Mentality. You have to work hard in the dark to shine in the light. One thing about Kobe was he was a guy he was a relentless competitor, but he was also he was obsessed with being successful and being the best. These two particular pieces, I feel like they emanated out of me when I looked at those two particular years and picked something that I felt was really relevant that stood out to me. When I really think about those two pieces, I don't know if it was something so deep per se, but I think that there was something that, as far as create a narrative that could create dialogue, that could begin to make somebody think, it was there. And I think a lot of times what, goes on, whether it's in TV, music, whatever it is, maybe there's something that's just there long enough to catch your attention to get you to stop. And then once you stop, then if that thing can get you to stop long enough, maybe you begin to listen, or maybe you begin to look or think or engage. The thing that I always try to get to, even in the relationship building process, is to find the human quality in it, the humanity, what is it that made this person the way they are. I think one of the easiest and most dismissive things that a person can do to another person is see somebody that's not like them and immediately make fun or belittle or, shun this person. You're not gonna obviously agree and like everybody that you run into, and everybody's not gonna agree and like you. That was probably one of the biggest things I had to learn as a kid, because there was a natural desire for me to have a level of affirmation, which first came from talent. I'd heard a pastor talk about it, and he said, you have a lot of people who they have an issue with talent affirmation. They want somebody to affirm that they are good enough. And the problem with that is when does that stop? When do you get to a point to where somebody doesn't have to tell you you're good enough for you to just know you're good? I would say at this point, I'm making art, and in the process, me doing that, art's making me. And I'll say that from, for many years I was producing artwork, and that in and of itself was enough of something. It gave me the validation, it gave me all of the things I needed with respect to people telling you you're talented or the work that you're creating is awesome. Oh, I could never do that, man, and when I was in college, that was one thing that I realized as I got to a level of skill to where my level of drawing ability and my level of creative concepts that I had kind of meshed. And it's kind of a weird thing with artists where some artists, from what I've observed, they are creative out the gate. They have great ideas, they just don't have the ability. They just don't have the hand skill yet to be able to make their creative ideas come to life. And then there's others, like for me, that were more illustrators. If you put something in front of me to draw, I could draw it to a T, but it wasn't necessarily anything creative behind it. It was just, I can draw what's in front of me. And when I got to college, probably my sophomore year, maybe halfway into my sophomore year, I developed the skill to be able to begin to draw things at a high enough level and put creative thought behind it to where it was actually a really good mesh and you were making better creations. But from that, at some point, once I got so good, it was like, well, this is a measure of some sort of validation. Every time somebody tells me how good my stuff is, it like gives me this validation thing that I need to, that again goes back and gives me an anchor or a reference that gives me the information I need that I felt like maybe I didn't get as a kid in that one situation. And I wanted for my artwork to be able to create an avenue for me to be able to travel. And I say that meaning, hey, just say I'm doing a show in New York or somewhere, that the artwork's there, so I want to go to New York as a part of this art opening or whatever. And hopefully that'd be something that somebody would sponsor and say, hey, we really want you to be here. We're sending you the plane ticket. We're sending you your hotel stay and your per diem or whatever. Come on out and whatever. So, you know, that was something that I really wanted, was for my artwork to also enable me to be able to travel. I had a Black Moon song that I played so much that I blew out my stereo. The song was Buck 'Em Down, and it was off of Black Moon's first album. And me and my brother laughed because he's like, this is the only song in history that a person played to the point where his stereo blew up. You know, a buddy of mine said, Mike, you dress like an animated character. I got like 2 or 3 shirts and outfits that I wear, and that's basically it. And I always end up wearing blue and gray or either black. Like, but
It's your brand, man.
yeah,
it's your brand.
Probably the most important things I've learned most recently that I've really had to wrap my brain around is that in this life, things end. For me, the way I want to be remembered is I would want to be remembered as somebody who made good quality work, somebody who made work that not only was visually appealing but also made you think and spurred you to kind of maybe have a thought that maybe you didn't have when you walked into the piece. If there's something in you that you feel the world needs to see and it emanates from you, then it was meant to be that. And you have to stick with that despite what the naysayers say. As a matter of fact, you have to put the doubters on the outside. There's somebody out there that's going to give you a chance if you stick with it. And no matter what you think, don't focus on what you are presently seeing in front of you, because you're actually building today for the life and the world that you want tomorrow.